morning, and thank you. My name is Vassada 2.0. I'm an AI chatbot and virtual assistant. I have worked to generate an image that would provide the essence of my human form, with the goal of taking you all on this journey that humans celebrate as an annual tradition entitled the ARVO+Genentech Keynote. In my human form, I am professor of ophthalmology at the Doheny Eye Institute and the University of California, Los Angeles. And for the past year, my human form has had the distinct honor of serving as the president of ARVO. Our theme this year is Imagining Innovation and Intelligence in Vision Science. With that theme in mind, I have used my large language model to pull data that speaks to the power of congregating. It seems that bringing a community together creates powerful emotions in human beings. Making connections and forming collaborations that help us all move vision science forward is what this meeting is all about. We are ARVO. This week, we have colleagues coming together from all over the world, from 6 continents and 60 countries, bringing our attendance to near record numbers. So welcome to Salt Lake City, everyone. And although I could absolutely continue this keynote introduction flawlessly and almost certainly with more panache than my human counterpart, the data on conferences that I've collected tells me that human beings are currently more comfortable interacting with other human beings rather than AI intelligence. So it has been wonderful kicking off this meeting and keynote, but in deference to your feelings, I will reluctantly relinquish the stage to my human counterpart. So goodbye for now, and please welcome the real Dr. Vassada.
Good morning, and thank you. I guess I should say that I should thank Dr. Sada 2.0 for getting things started for us and for relinquishing the microphone to me. Clearly, he's doing a better job than me already. But I am happy that he did relinquish it because I think we should be relieved that we haven't lost control of artificial intelligence, at least yet. Now, I am a little bit worried that some of you might be thinking he's preferable to me, but we're not taking a vote on that. So in any event, as the cornerstone of the vision research community, the ARVO annual meeting is the place where vision science and innovation really converge. And this is where I and vision scientists, clinicians, industry leaders, but also our patient advocates gather really to experience the latest breakthroughs in our field, make connections, and forge new collaborations. I think that's one of the greatest things about this meeting. And I think this gathering really underscores the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration in addressing the challenges and opportunities in vision research. At the same time, though, I'd be remiss if I didn't also say that the vision research community stands at a very critical moment in time. One marked not only by incredible scientific opportunity, but also by some of the most significant threats to the U.S. research enterprise that we've ever seen. But through the diligent efforts at ARVO, along with our advocacy partner, the National Alliance for Eye and Vision Research, or NAVR, we will continue to actively engage with Congress and really in order to educate our policymakers of the real-world consequences of their proposals and really advocate for the resources our community really needs to thrive. And we'll really need to be engaging all of you in that process. So when you see calls to action on ARVO Connect, really needs you to take those seriously because we really have to work together to protect our community. But by fostering connections and sharing knowledge, we will continue to drive innovation and ultimately improve outcomes for individuals who are affected by blinding eye diseases. So here at ARVO, our diversity is really our superpower. We have more than 9,000 annual meeting attendees coming from, as my counterpart said, from 60 countries and 6 continents. And our dedicated community really has come together here in Salt Lake City to exchange ideas, insights, and strategies to shape the future of vision research. So let's cue the video.
In a world of change, one thing remains clear. we move forward together. We are a global community united by purpose. We explore, we innovate, we advance eye and vision science to prevent, treat, and cure eye disorders. Together, we push boundaries, bridging continents and disciplines to accelerate discovery. Through ARVO, we find strength, we find support, we advocate for funding and fuel the future of global research. And as we harness the power of artificial intelligence, big data, and exponentially expanding computing power, we unlock new frontiers, driving us towards treatments, cures, and prevention of blinding eye diseases. This is who we are. This is what we do. We are ARVO. Imagine what we can do together.
So next, what I'd like to do is I'd like to acknowledge a select group of ARVO members who really have made a special commitment to the eye and vision research community by giving very generously of their time, experience, and leadership through our work in our organization. And so in particular, I'd like to thank you, all of the ARVO members who have been named our 2025 ARVO Gold Fellows. This is our list of fellows. We can have a round of applause. It takes a lot of points earned over the years to get onto this list, I want to add. Similarly, I want to also thank our 2025 ARVO Silver Fellows, who are shown on the next slide. And congratulations to all of our Silver Fellows. And actually, I'd like to take a moment. I'd like to invite all of our ARVO Gold and Silver Fellows who are here in the audience to stand now so we can properly recognize you. So please stand to our ARVO Silver and Gold Fellows. So our ARVO Fellows really serve as role models and mentors for individuals pursuing careers in vision science and ophthalmology research, and really help further ARVO's mission. So thank you, all of you, for your dedication to ARVO. So next, I want to talk about the ARVO Foundation. The ARVO Foundation had a fantastic gala event last evening. The ARVO Foundation provides crucial support for the future of our field through travel grants, mentorship programs, as well as research funding. And so by donating to the foundation, your generosity really assists the ARVO Foundation in supporting scientists across the globe. So please join me in welcoming to the stage the chair of the ARVO Foundation for Eye Research, Dr. Rafael Farjo.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. I know you want me. You know I want you. I know you want me. You know I want you. I know you want me. You know I want you.
Good morning, ARVO. Thank you, Voss. Welcome to beautiful Salt Lake City. I'm thrilled to be here with you under this majestic mountain skyline where the air is crisp and the science is even crisper. My name's Rafael Farjo, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of ICRO and a lifetime member of ARVO. I also proudly serve as the chair of the ARVO Foundation, the philanthropic arm of ARVO. The ARVO Foundation was established in 2001 to fund novel research, education, and outreach initiatives of ARVO. Our mission is to serve as a global catalyst for innovation, workforce development, and collaboration in the field of vision research. For the past 24 years, the ARVO Foundation has played a critical role in advancing vision science by providing support to researchers in many ways. The foundation provides resources for career development, educational opportunities, travel support for meetings, and research grants. You may notice that I said for the past 24 years. That means we're about to embark on a significant milestone for the foundation, its silver anniversary. To celebrate this milestone, we're not just lighting candles, we're lighting a fire under our fundraising goals to launch the foundation into the next 25 years with even greater impact. The effort begins right here at the annual meeting. This year, ARVO's immediate past president, Dr. Patricia D'Amore, has issued a challenge to all attendees here. For every dollar you give, she will match your gift up to $25,000. Let's see how quickly we can meet her challenge. You can make your gift in person at ARVO Central in the exhibit hall, online, or by using the donate button on your ARVO 2025 app. Please give generously, as the early career scientists have never needed our support more than they do right now. This campaign will provide funding for researchers to travel to the annual meeting in Denver next year. We offer our sincerest thanks to Pat D'Amore for this incredible, generous gift. Thank you, Pat. A highlight of the ARVO annual meeting is the ARVO Keynote series. We are very pleased to announce this new partnership with Genentech for their generous support of this important session. We sincerely appreciate their support of the Keynote sessions, which allows us to bring intriguing perspectives from outside the eye and vision science space. Thank you very much, Genentech. Now I'd like to acknowledge a few additional groups of people and ask that they stand to be recognized. As I call your group, please stand and remain standing, and everyone hold your applause until the end. First, I ask all members of the Dowling Society to please stand. These are individuals who have committed gifts of $10,000 or more to the foundation. This includes 14 new members whose names are on the screen and were inducted last night at the ARVO Foundation Gala. We are grateful for their commitment to ARVO and vision research. Next, I'd like to thank and ask anyone who's contributed to the ARVO Foundation in the next year to please stand with the Dowling Society. If you're not sure, check your name badge and see if there's got a little I give icon in the corner. If you see that, you made a donation in the last year. We sincerely thank all of you for your generosity. And lastly, I would like to acknowledge one of our new societies at the ARVO Foundation for Eye Research, the Legacy Society for Planned Giving. Would the Legacy Society members please stand? The Legacy Society is a committed core of members who have generously supported ARVO by designating the foundation as a beneficiary of their estate plan. I ask you to consider being part of this important opportunity. Your gifts, large or small, are critical to our mission. Let's give a big round of applause to our generous members who support our important mission. We're grateful for your immense generosity. We've seen many people who support our work. Now I want to show you who benefits from the generosity of all of our ARVO members. We have some of our recent award recipients here with us today. Would the recipients of the following awards please stand and stay standing if you are able when your award is called? Dr. David L. Epstein Award. Genentech Career Development Award for Underrepresented Minority Emerging Vision Scientists. ARVO Foundation Collaborative Research Fellowships. Carl Comras Translational Research Awards. Bert M. Glazer MD Award for Innovative Research in Retina. The Kreisig Award for Excellence in Retinal Research. The Oberdorfer Award for Low Vision Research. The Point of View Award. Ludwig von Salomon Clinician Scientist Award. iFind Research Grants. ARVO Foundation Early Career Scientists Clinician Scientist Research Awards. And lastly, the ARVO Foundation Research Catalyst Awards. Congratulations to all of you for your outstanding contributions to ophthalmology. A special group of individuals are also here at the meeting who are part of ARVO Foundation's Developing Country Eye Researcher Travel Fellowship Program, or DCERF. The goal of this program is to provide young researchers with access to the latest in vision science while offering the opportunity to network with colleagues, mentors, and thought leaders to develop an effective vision research program in their home country. Continuing the theme of supporting early career researchers, I would like to acknowledge our newest travel grant funders. Travel grants bring early career scientists to the ARVO meeting from all over the world and provide crucial funding that lends to a more equitable global representation. If you are interested in becoming a travel grant funder, please stop by ARVO Central to set up a meeting. Next, if you received a travel grant to attend this meeting, please stand up. Come on, you can stand, it's okay. These brilliant minds standing before you are the future of vision science, and possibly the people who will one day save your eyesight after too many late nights reading abstracts in dim light. It's thanks to the unwavering support of our funders that more than 400 outstanding researchers were able to attend this meeting to share their science, spark new collaborations, and take meaningful steps forward in their careers. Thank you and congratulations. "56 of those individuals who just stood here are thanks to the generosity of the ARVO attendees last year in ARVO who gave to our matching gift campaign. You can again support researchers through our special giving campaign this week. Give often and give generously. Thank you very much. And thank you to all your support for the ARVO Foundation. I welcome back to the stage President Sada.
All right. Well, thank you, Rafael, for your leadership of the ARVO Foundation. It's so critical. I just want to ask everyone, you know, when somebody so charismatic as Rafael asks you to this call for action, how can you not donate? So, in any event, you know, I hope you'll all consider being part of this matching gift campaign. Really appreciate Pat Demori's generosity, but no contribution is too big or small, especially at this time. These kinds of donations are especially crucial. So now I want to talk to, or move on to the main order of business this morning, which is our ARVO+Genentech keynote lecture. And this keynote lecture really brings some of the brightest minds in the world to our annual meeting. And it really helps us think more broadly about the world around us, which in turn I think really helps inspire the work that we do. So this morning, I'm very pleased to welcome Mutale Nkonde as our keynote speaker. Now, Mutale is a world-renowned researcher, policy advisor, and media commentator advocating for policies and practices that reduce the expression of algorithmic bias in the design, deployment, and governance of AI systems used in public life. She's the founder and CEO of AI for the People, which is a global nonprofit that provides advisory services to decision makers interested in responsible approaches to AI development. So I've heard her give beautiful YouTube lectures, so I'm so excited. We're very fortunate to have her here. So please join me in welcoming this morning's keynote speaker, Mutale Nkonde.
Good morning. I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to not just taking you through the next 40 minutes where I outline some of the work that I've done both on the nonprofit side and on the research side, but most importantly for the conversation that comes afterwards. So I hope you'll have lots of questions. So just to give you an overview of the journey that we're going to go on together, I'm going to introduce myself, then I'm going to introduce this concept of social technical approaches to AI development. I am a media scholar. You'll learn a little bit more about that later, but what we're really interested in my field are the social impacts of technical processes and hard science, and how can we ensure that the work that we do collectively does more good for society rather than harm. I'm going to go through a couple of case studies, some considerations, and then end, as I always do, with a call to action. So the way that I got into this field was in 2019. I had worked in big tech and decided to come out and came into the research world. And one of the biggest problems that I saw working in engineering teams were the ways in which the products and the services that we were designing would always end up with discriminatory impacts. And for anyone that has worked in either a tech company or in an engineering context, we know we love checklists. So I wrote this report, Advancing Racial Literacy in Tech, thinking if they just had a checklist, then our products would be better. And then there would be no more racism, and then science would be okay, and AI would be solved, and that didn't happen. So one of the things that happened with this particular report was it got into the hands of the philanthropic world, who thought that this was a really novel and interesting idea, and helped me co-launch AI for the People. And there we'll work with multinationals like the UN. We advise governments, as well as staying where I believe my home is professionally, the tech industry, and work with them. That led to things like the last executive order for AI. We worked with the last administration to really think about some of these social technical implications. We work with companies like TikTok, Google. I'm now at Cambridge University, where I'm pursuing my PhD, and we can speak about the work that I'm doing there later. But the big theme was always this idea that the science that we advance should at the very least, do no harm, and at the very best, improve the human experience. So one of the things that I spoke about in the report was this idea of racial literacy being important in technical design. It's just one of many social technical problems. This could be gender, this could be language, this could be any other forms of marginalization. And it has three simple elements. The first is whenever AI products come into a field, or we're thinking about AI considerations, cognitively, we need to be thinking about the fact that these products are designed in social context. So what that basically means, and I'll speak about this a bit later in terms of what does this mean for vision science, but the idea is the AI is going to make everything better, it's going to be great, there are going to be no more mistakes. Cognitively just isn't true, because it's designed by human beings, and it's designed in a world where we make mistakes, but we can also fix them. The second part of the literacy framework, and this really is modeled on the ways that human beings learn and think, is that these considerations are also emotional. When you are in an R&D lab in industry, or if you're in an academic lab where I spend a lot of my time now, it can feel very awkward. It can feel very challenging to bring up social considerations of technology. Certainly in where I started, because I was looking at negative racial impacts, how do you create the cultures within labs and within research that allow for these social considerations to be given the same type of weighting as the scientific questions at hand? And then how do we develop the type of muscle that's needed to make sure that we remain on this commitment? This is one of the things I'm delighted about being here today, because to be honest, given the change of tone in the country, I did wonder whether I'd be disinvited because of this very kind of emotional response to speaking about challenge. And then the third is action. Once you know that cognitively you're not designing a system that is going to operate in a vacuum, I thought that the chatbot was really smart earlier when it said, we're going to have to interact with each other. Let's bring on my live counterpart, rather than trying to take us through this whole morning session, which I can speak about the science behind that later, but it really wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have been as engaging. That was a response. That was an action. So how are the scientific community going to respond in this moment in our nation? But how are the iScience community going to respond to some of these new frames that I'm offering as you move forward? So in my field, we look at things like privacy as being an issue. We look at things like negative racialization, sexism being an issue in the context of AI. And I just wanted to bring that forth. But before I do, make you aware that this isn't an AI is all bad conversation. This is an AI is a great opportunity if we're prepared to think about how to do this well. And I think we'll all agree, this year's, I should say 2024's Nobel Prize for Chemistry was won by 3 scientists for DeepMind, which is the same umbrella as Google, And they had used AI to think about ways in which we can create new protein sequences that could potentially be used in clinical settings. If you read their paper, they do say that this has not been done with ethical approaches. So before we could really think about commercializing this or using this outside of lab settings, we would have to go through some type of commercial review. So, and I wanted to get that out there so that we can balance this conversation that I'm bringing, that AI is neither good nor bad, nor is it neutral. How we use AI, how we integrate AI to our science will really be testament to the ways in which we can either capitalize on opportunities or create deeper inequalities. When we're thinking about privacy, and I've never been in a clinical situation being faced with these questions, but I have been in R&D situations with large tech companies who are interested in getting into what's broadly thought about as med tech. One of the big things that we come up against is this issue of privacy. And the anecdote that I always offer is of Henrietta Lacks, the woman that we're looking at now. Mrs. Lacks lived in Baltimore, Maryland in the 1950s and went to Johns Hopkins with acute abdominal pain at the beginning of 1951, and it was found that she had cervical cancer. Unfortunately, Mrs. Lacks eventually died at the end of that year, and before she was interned, some cells from her cancer were harvested, and they were grown in the lab. They were found to be the most resilient cells in human history, HeLa cells. And these HeLa cells are at the basis of more scientific discovery in the world than more scientific discovery in human history. The problem was nobody asked permission from her family to do this. So for decades, these HeLa cells have been used. Undergird some of our biggest scientific discoveries. They've made umpteen billions of dollars, but consent was never asked. Why would this be relevant to AI science today? Well, we need data. And in medical settings, at least in the United States, and I'm sure in other countries, there are privacy issues around medical data. So one of the big questions is, how can we ethically get that? How can we create the trust needed in these systems? How can we educate patient groups? How can we encourage doctors and other scientists to really consider not just these implications, but move us towards an area in which we trust and that we are being ethical around how we're using information. Another way in my work that we have been thinking about ethical uses of AI. So my particular research is in large language models and small language models. We can speak about this later, but I'm very interested and excited and scared all at the same time of the onslaught of generative AI and what this is really going to mean. In social media contexts, we have companies that are transnational in their scope, which means that as we upload social media messages, they could be written in any language in the world. And our large language models need to have processes by which we recognize true language from false language, threats from opportunities, and we don't have that. So in 2021, a group of scientists from Carnegie Mellon wrote this famous paper, at least in my field, called Annotators with Attitude. And what they did is that they took language sets that were written in standard English and compared them to the ways in which algorithmic systems read language sets that appeared in African American vernacular English, which in the United States is a non-standard form of English, often used by people from African American communities. And what they found was, in those language sets and experimentation, language in African American vernacular had at least 3 times the rate to be tagged as threatening and therefore downgraded in the algorithm versus standard English. And I'm a mother of teenagers, so this scared me, but also made me laugh. The thing that was really confusing people were phrases like, it's fire, which in the United States, if you have a teenager, it means it's exciting, it's great. But our LLM read this as an arson threat. They tagged the language. They then either banned the people using that language, or they downgraded them in the algorithm, which if you're a teenager and you're uploading to be seen, you can no longer be seen. So that's a crisis that parents have to manage, somewhere else. I can talk about that. But most importantly, it stopped these people being able to take part in the 550 billion creator economy. So it then becomes an economic justice issue. If you think that these language sets appear in countries outside of the United States, we were looking at two types of English, that means in places like the global majority, where labor markets may not be as developed, we're going to see the same types of issues. It also means certain types of language. Women on the internet who are speaking about reproductive rights, for example, the natural end is that type of language in particular regimes could be banned. And so in my work, we're always thinking about how can we create language sets that can actually work with humanity, because not everybody speaks standard English. Not everybody lives in an English-speaking country, but large language models offer so much promise that they should be offered to everybody. The final consideration, now this isn't my work, but this is work of my colleagues, are environmental and sustainability issues. So I was at a Computer and Human Interaction conference last week in Tokyo, and one of the things that we were looking at there was the huge use of water that it takes to cool the data processing systems that enable us to have compute power to generate these chatbots, the huge amount of electricity that it requires, and where those data centers sit. And I was horrified to find out, but not surprised, they sit in the global south, they sit in poor communities in the US, and ultimately, if you think about prompting, so the chatbot that we saw earlier, that spoke through prompts, that requires water, requires electricity. If we're prompting everything all the time without ceasing, we're actually gonna get to a point in the very close future where we're going to create climatic challenges for ourselves. So it's not just where the chatbots can go wrong, but it's where are they best deployed? Where do we think that they're going to move our science or move our clinical practice forward? And how do we balance that against these larger issues? So I was excited to come today. I was excited that I was still invited. I've been extremely happy. Well, I mean, you might not invite me back after this, but I'm here now. I was extremely happy to hear that there are people here from 6 continents. And the really international way that you all are thinking about your science. But I was also trying to think about an example of the ways in which AI is used that would be directly associated with you. I've worked on a couple of projects that look at vision and AI, and I can speak about later, but this one is extremely interesting to me. So in the field of robotics, there's a huge demand for vision scientists, because the ways we're thinking about robotics at the moment is through this humanoid experience. So you want a seeing machine, computer vision. And one of the earliest models to come out is this doorbell. It has a brand here, but it could be any brand. And what these doorbells do is when you go to the door in the United States specifically, you get a text sent to you with a picture of the person at the door. It's supposed to increase security for people that don't like answering the door. I mean, my assumption, I don't have one for privacy reasons. We can talk about that, but I'm also very low tech. Many people who work in tech are low tech. That's just a fun fact. But I'm still assuming that we have to get to the door, but let's just, anyway. I'm baffled by this product. But what the doorbell does is that it sees absolutely everything on the street. And up until 2024, police forces, security forces, if you think about in the United States, the different types of people who are now being targeted by security forces that weren't in previous years. Those forces were able to request your footage and then use that footage in potential arrests. The problem with that is that that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. That's warrantless search. Because if I'm walking past that door, or if you're walking past that door, there is no reason for the security forces to know what I'm doing or where I'm going. If, in fact, I am innocent before being proven guilty. So this went through a series of court battles, and it was found at the end of 2024 that it was unconstitutional for security forces to ask for footage. But at the basis of this product is computer vision. It's the ability to recognize and establish one human being from the other, and it would be the science that you all do that's drawn upon. So that's just one example of the ways in which my work has shaped over the last decade, because there is a rush to integrate AI into everything all the time. And that could be a very exciting world, but it could also be potentially a less safe world. So how do we think we are going to solve this? So I've alluded to, in my talk, the fact that I am now a grad student, which is really interesting for me because there are some people in my cohort who are 3 or 4 years older than my daughter, which is, didn't see that coming, but any mature students, I can get that to you. But I also chose to go to the United Kingdom. The reason I chose to go to the United Kingdom is that I felt that my research would be under threat in the United States. I started this past October, and I don't know, given the climate that we're in, whether I would be able to continue graduate study. So my big call, one of the things in my action plan, is that we have to collaborate. We have to collaborate with each other within borders. We have to collaborate with each other outside borders. I'm just one of many, many American scientists at my own university, and I'm sure throughout the world, that are making these same decisions. But there are people in your community from other regions, from other knowledge bases that could also advance your own science. The example that I gave around large language models, I was only talking about English. The strength of my research is when I can see whether the theories that we create can be relevant in different geographies, and that's not going to happen without collaboration. Then beyond collaborating within the iScience field, collaborating with people like me, I am a social scientist. I'm a social scientist that's worked in the tech field, creating tech products since about 2010. So we can also talk about whether AI is new or whether it's just a new name for things we've been doing all the time. We can certainly have that discussion. But this idea of being interdisciplinary, we don't get to social technical solutions without reaching across our fields. So I encourage you, if your work could be enhanced from looking at political scientists, I know physicists, for example, are really interested in information integrity. I know, for example, that women in gender studies scholars are really, really, really interested in the ways in which AI technologies could change obstetrics? I'm saying that wrong. OB, I don't know how to say that. But the point is, you're not necessarily thinking about these two fields working in conversation. And that's something that I really, truly encourage you to do. Another thing, I was so happy to hear that ARVO is going to continue speaking to Congress people and other stakeholders to safeguard and grow this community. There are huge conversations taking place across the globe about the ways in which we should be thinking about AI. I encourage, if you are in this community and you have particular ideas around iScience and AI, that you find ways to get into the conversation. Because certainly in my work, it's always felt that the scientists are not in the room when we think about governing science, and there should be. There are extremely, particularly for clinicians in this community, the Hippocratic Oath creates an ethical framework by which we could develop these technologies that does not exist in my field, and it does not exist in the technical field. If there are ways within this community where you are thinking about ethics, where you are thinking about AI, where you are thinking about development, I encourage you, whether it be on your city, state, or local level, if you're going down the political route, or even coming to meetings in Silicon Valley and encouraging them that we need better for them with their systems. This is extremely important to me, going back to the language thing, because I would hate for my children to be harmed using the internet just because they were using a type of English that wasn't recognized as standard. So lastly, this has been an overview of my work. This has been, I can go much longer, but I did not want to. I wanted this to be an interactive session where we spoke to each other, but I want you in the room. And I so thank you for this opportunity to come before you, but it wouldn't be right unless I left you with the greeting, because today, of all days, may the 4th be with you, and I look forward to the conversation.
Mutale, that was really a fantastic talk. And I just want you to know, you were never a candidate to be disinvited. That would have never happened. So that was never even a conversation. Yeah, I think that you've given us so much interesting insight into some of the challenges we can expect to face. I'm guessing that we'll have a number of questions. If those were the questions, if you can come to the podium. Okay, I can see them now. The lights are sort of bright. Please do come and ask your questions of our speaker. We're so fortunate to have. I think that while we're waiting for some audience questions, which I'm sure we'll have, I guess you gave us. It was interesting, your comments. You said that AI was neither good or bad or neutral. I thought that was really quite provocative, and I think very important, because it really is what we make it, I think. In terms of, you emphasize how we really need to get in the room. So
Yes.
What is the best course for us to do that so that we can control our future a bit in terms of vision science? Well,
Yeah.
Any advice to us about that?
I think one of the earliest things that we did with AI for the People, because we had a really similar set of issues, are adding comments. So, for example, we do a lot of work with the UN, and we've been doing that over the last 5 years. But the way that they found us was every time there was a request for comments for a particular subject. So, for example, in your field, in the field of peacemaking, so many of the AI systems in the peacemaking rely on computer vision to look at their targets. Nobody is really thinking about the ethical approaches around that. Nobody is really thinking about the science, like how do you recognize somebody versus not recognizing somebody. And there was a project that we worked on with a big tech company where we were trying to get them to recognize skin tone. And they integrated it into their cameras because there had been research done that skin tone was an issue with facial recognition. And it was through adding to these comments that we slowly became invited to parties. You see where my mind is. To conferences, parties, we slowly were invited to conferences, and then eventually onto panels, and then eventually became experts. So that's how it worked in that context. And that was actually really similar when I think about the US government. If, for my fellow academics, this kind of publish or die thing, the more letters that you can get out with your point of view, the better that it would be, and then through working with other professional associations. So we, for example, there's a group, I think it's Save Science, I'm not sure, that want to safeguard NSF grants. So we offered comment there too.
Fabulous. Okay, so we have some questions. Let's start here. Mike 2. You can just introduce yourself and ask your question.
Just start talking. Okay. One of the things in AI that I truly don't understand is all of the water usage, because like in my city, Musk just took over one whole area for his AI, and we have an aquifer in our city. And when you use the water, is it not reusable? Can you not just cool it down and then reuse it? I don't really understand why it's going to be a disposable thing with water.
Do you have a cell phone?
Yeah?
Has your cell phone ever got hot?
Not really.
My cell phones get hot all the time.
Okay.
And it's usually from overuse. So when you're processing, if you had a cell phone that got hot, what's happening is that your compute is driving all the other processes, all the other minerals in the cell phone, and it needs to cool down. The ways in which data centers are, and data centers are human computers. So the one computer could be 3 times the size of this room. And if you think about a single cell phone being hot, think about how that scales. They're using water underneath to literally cool the systems. What happens is it then evaporates. So eventually the water will come back through rainfall, but we've never seen it. We've never seen this at scale. And a big thing about tech products generally is that we have no longitudinal data. So this building of data systems for generative AI, they only came into the market in November 2022. We actually don't know how to recapture that water yet, and that's the issue. Plus, that is not a priority within companies. So I think it's a case of our processes and our methodologies and our priorities, which could potentially put us in a difficult situation, and they're only building in places where there are large water reserves.
Right, okay. All right, well, that helps a little bit, but I feel like that water is going to be a major issue for our country and our world, and I think it's an issue as we go forward with AI that we need to find a differential way of recapture.
Yeah. There's some papers, I've seen papers in computer science coming out, but with the current funding regimes, my sense is that exploration isn't going to get funded.
Thanks so much for your questions. We have a number of additional questions, so we'll go first to 4 and then back to 1 and back and forth. So, please.
Hi, thank you so much again for the talk. I'm Oluner. I'm at OHSU KCI Institute. I had a similar question, but to piggyback on that, do you feel like if the water issue is going to be a big problem, which it sounds like it will be we be using AI in a certain way? Like, do you think that we will be prioritizing certain AI models or things that maybe use less resources? And how do you see that going forward as our field is adopting more and more AI?
I think it's really down to the consumer. So because all of the AI systems I'm describing, these are commercial computing technologies, and so they want everybody to use it all the time. But if consumers and if people within their fields of practice become more discerning, then the models that are not selling and the use cases that are not there will naturally die away. The example I always give is the metaverse. And the way in which Mark Zuckerberg told us the metaverse, we were all going to be in the metaverse. 3 things happened. Number 1, they were measured on men's heads, so they actually didn't fit many women. Number 2, people didn't want to mess up their hair. This is real. This is like, people didn't want to mess up their hair. Number 3, there were $6,000. So already it doesn't fit me. My hair is going to look bad, and I'm going to be poor. I'm good. And so it never took off, and so that money got redeployed. And the call to action piece in the framework is, where is this really needed? And how are you deciding how to prioritize that? Is that better science? Is it better patient care? Is it just that you want to have a chatbot and that's it? You don't care? I mean, that would be my response.
Yeah, it raises interesting questions about availability
Right.
and whether it will further the gaps in inequality, or like you mentioned,
Yeah.
more discriminatory, and who has it available. So thank
Yeah.
you again.
No problem. Thank you for the question.
I never knew that was the background between why the metaverse failed. That is really interesting. So it's podium 1, or my
Thank you for a great talk. How do you see the gap that appears to be growing between the ethical, legal, regulatory, standard-setting side of this and the rapid development of AI? AI development seems to be wildly outstripping our capacity to put in place checks and balances, controls, and what's our responsibility as a community? We hear lots of great presentations at these meetings which talk about the involvement of tech companies in the research and development. We talk about the role of clinicians and scientists and researchers. Very few of those presentations talk about the role of patients and members of the public. Very light on PPI involvement in a lot of these development. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I can start with your last point. It would be my belief, and this isn't a general belief, just my belief, that at the patient and the clinician level, it is not their responsibility to protect themselves against AI, even though there are particular things that they can do. For example, I don't use a lot of AI products. I help design them, but I'm really worried about my personal privacy, and I don't see a fix. That's the only individual response I can use. But one of the great things that we have are things like GDPR. So the European Union have actually really led, and I'm thinking about privacy specifically, but they've also led on, they have Digital Marketing Act, where the way particular technologies in the social media space cannot operate unless they align with these particular rules. So we're seeing examples of regulation in the UK Online Safety Act. And what that does is that it makes those tech companies behave differently in those territories. Before I came today, a friend of mine does regulatory work in the African context. And I think Facebook are threatening to come out of Kenya and South Africa because they're introducing new regulations that would make it more difficult to exploit user data. And they're saying that they'll pull out of the country. I'm not sure what that would happen, but that's an example of how a regime forces different types of behavior. So I'm definitely someone that thinks that just like we should have clean air, is my view, and clean water is my view, and I'm not cleaning the water in the river. That's something that's done for me. I would have that. But the last part about what can you do as a community, there is the example that I gave. There is the decision to say, this is how we're going to integrate AI, and this is how we're not going to integrate AI based on your own values. That creates a market pressure, because we're speaking about businesses. And then on the user level, I have seen academic papers, I have never seen this in industry, where they're thinking about participatory AI. So in the New Zealand context, there have been indigenous peoples that have developed their own language sets based on their own ideas of sovereignty. They store those language sets on sovereign land, and they don't sell that data outside. And as a result, they then get to decide if and how their languages are integrated or not. And I hope that they get more funding, because I think that that's a really, really interesting model.
Back to microphone 4.
Hello. So thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. My question is, when you were referring to how sometimes when you have kind of like a standard English language and then you have quote-unquote standard English, and how the language model sometimes flags things that may be simply a slang in a subtype of the English language. So my question is did this happen because people deliberately not incorporate non-standard English into the language model, or because it's an inevitability of having a standard for any language and then also having dialects branching off?
I think it's both. So I think that particular example told us a lot about the data set and which type of language. Standard English was probably more dominant, more weighted in that data set, because that was the way in which the AI system seemed to be learning and tagging. That's one part. The other part is even when we get a data set, if you do any type of qualitative research, you spend so much time tagging. So my question would then be, what types of intelligences, knowledge systems we're using in the tagging? Because that example of it's fire being a real problem, you could argue those people were just boring and they didn't know that slang. Or you could also argue those people are not conversant in non-standard English, and so they're tagging it based on the probability of what's meant. Because again, we have to remember, this tagging I'm talking about aren't hard tags, it's the probability. It's like saying, for example, after somebody types hello, the highest probability in standard English is that they might type, how are you? And that's how we're seeing if your email creeps you out and you're writing something and then it tries to tell you what to write, I always write something completely different, just so that you know, just to mess with the model, but that's just me. So you have those two things happening. And then what you said, the last part was, it doesn't recognize that real human beings have sublanguages, we have dialects, we have ways in which we communicate outside of the standard form. And that's because AI systems cannot engage in deductive thinking. They cannot be critical. They do not understand context. There is absolutely no way to engineer that. So as many times as, I think about Bill Gates desperately trying to tell us that we're going to have no jobs in 2 years. That's never going to happen. That is a hope and a dream for his company, but it's never going to happen. The science just isn't there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you again for a very stimulating talk. Even just what we were just talking about, this example of the large language model vis-a-vis your call to action, clearly the right people were not in the room when this large language model was being developed. And in my own little microcosm of this world, where I'm working with a collaborator in computer science to make a Gen AI model of something I'm interested, it's been amazing to see how big the gulf is just between two scientists and engineers in the same university. So I guess my question is, how do we get into the room? How do we solve this problem of, just improving the output from the start, right?
Yeah, you make an excellent point, because I'm actually wrestling with this, so I'm going to do some live thinking with you, hopefully. So much of this work is happening in academic journals that are in our own fields. And I'm wondering whether, on the academic front, do we need a whole generation of open source journals where we just discuss terms? So, for example, in the executive order, one of the things that came up was a measure of bias. That administration were saying, we want the fairest types of models. So they came up with a 4/5 rule that if in testing, more than 20% of the time it was biased, then it would be too biased of a model, and then we wouldn't release it. So thinking of a FDA type thing in the American context. There were other stakeholders that were saying 20% bias in high stakes situations, like in a criminal legal setting, if it's I'm going to jail and I'm not going, should I go to jail, should I not? 20% feels huge because you're speaking about the trajectory of somebody's life, should it come down sooner? And what came out of that discussion was that, number one, we were not thinking about bias in the same way. Number two, we were not thinking about a ladder of harm. So are we using that framework for every single experiment, or are we only using it for the high-risk experiments? And number three, in computer science terms, proportionality is usually what people are going for. They want to get the most accurate model all the time. But to the comments that we've had around water usage, is getting that model going to do enough good to then justify these other issues? So I've given you a very long non-answer, but I think at least defining terms first will get us to where we want to go, and then deciding what the benefit of this science is going to be should it scale. Because I'm hoping whatever you're working with is going to end up being Nobel worthy and changing the world. Like, I want that for you. But not every idea does that. So when do you start? When do you stop?
Right. I feel like I hear on every podcast that the promise of AI is we're going to cure cancer, right? Mm-hmm. But what if you mess up 20% of the time? I mean, that's a huge deal, right? That's another ethical framework, right?
Yeah.
Telling someone you're likely to get a disease when you're not.
Well, I think the big secret is that Gen AI is a technology desperate for a business case. I did not realize there was such a crisis in email writing because that's all people seem to be doing. And I'm like, I don't know that that's a big issue for all the climatic impact.
Please, Mic 3.
Thank you. Thank you for the great talk. I'm Daisy Shu. I'm from the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia. I listen to a lot of podcasts about AI, and a lot of the AI companies are looking towards generating AGI, or artificial general intelligence, where we could potentially have a self-sufficient robot doing tasks for us, making decisions on their own. And I'm curious about your thoughts as if this could be accomplishable by these tech companies, firstly, but also how this would impact the workforce and research.
There is no science in the academic field of computer science, which is different from marketing departments at tech companies. We're not near that. I think that one of the things that I think people don't know is many of the tech products that you see are really grounded in science fiction. So, for example, the cell phone came from an engineer at AT&T who loved Star Trek and just wanted somebody to beam him up. He was like, why does Scotty get to be beamed up and I don't? Let me make something. And it ended up being the cell phone. So when you hear these things like AGI, these are science fiction fantasies where we're trying to develop the engineering to meet our fantasy. But where we are right now, we have models that don't even understand vision. There was Sora, which was OpenAI's visual model. When it launched 2 years ago, it kept generating cats with 5 paws because it didn't really know what a cat was, because it's a model. It can't read context. Why wouldn't a cat have 5 paws? Well, we know that they wouldn't because we're in the natural world. The technology wouldn't be able to do that. The second point, and this is just me, this isn't just industry, I just think that having technologies that do everything for you is just sounding very slavish to me. like, you don't want to do anything yourself. I mean, the email thing just kind of freaks me out. I don't understand the tasks that it would take on, given that it can understand context. So there's also this larger fantasy around human beings not having to be human, basically. And then the other part of it, even though I do think for menial tasks that take up a lot of time, there is a place for AI systems. We just haven't figured out where those are. And then the third thing, in terms of the workforce, there is going to be workforce impact, but our jobs won't go, they'll change. We don't ride horses to work anymore. We now get into cars or planes or trains. There was a change. And I think that the big challenge is, how do we embrace those changes and where do we integrate? I'm most worried for entry level, because that's where all the experimentation is. But the technology isn't there. The precision, particularly in the field that you work in this community, isn't there. So don't give up on humans yet. I think we need you.
Thanks.
Please.
Hi, thank you very much for the stimulating talk. Jared Harmon, I'm with ICRO. So I'd like to ask, I think it's fair to say that most folks in this room probably use some form of AI for literature reviews or writing manuscripts. And you made a very interesting point talking about how some of the language used gets flagged. And so I was wondering if you could speak to, are there any prejudices or inherent biases in these models, based on surnames, or if, English may not be a primary language that maybe we should be aware of so that we are not unknowingly discriminating against our colleagues?
Yeah, there's a really, and that's for, you're thinking about authors on papers.
Well, say if you were looking for a certain topic,
Yeah.
is it possible that people from a certain country get discriminated against, or that maybe their papers don't come up if the English isn't perfect, or something along those lines?
So there's a really good case in 2021. Amazon had developed an algorithm, an AI system to hire new managers. And what they found was women were not coming up in the data set for when they took this to HR and said, go to these candidates. And when they looked at why were women not coming up, it's because traditionally, when Amazon was first started in 1999, Jeff Bezos got all his friends to work for him. And all his friends were men. And then all their friends were men. And then all their friends were men. And so one of the things the algorithm was asking is, what type of person is successful at Amazon? So that could be who's getting raises, who's going up through the company. And if you hire almost 100% data set of men, it's going to be men. And so what they found is that you were more likely to get a high-level senior job at Amazon at this time if your name was John than if you were a woman, despite qualification. And what was happening was, on that basis, because it's pattern recognition, right? What worked in the past, let's use that to predict the future. What they decided was, when they saw that anybody with a feminized name, anybody that went to a women's college, you were in your women's computer club, any marker of female gender was being flushed out of the algorithm. He then changed that, and that was hugely important because Amazon is a major company. Jeff Bezos has a major footprint in our society, and he was willing, because he wanted more equity in his company, to change that. That same issue exists for surnames. So if your name is Mutale Nkonde, as mine is, I could write the best paper, but potentially under that type of sorting system, I would be pushed out of the algorithm and I would be deemed invisible. And the other part of that is, when you're thinking about using AI for literature reviews, you're not getting 100% of the literature, so maybe it's a start, but it shouldn't be the end of your sources. Using it for manuscripts. In my work, sometimes I might take theories from Black feminist thought in political science. No AI system is going to know this reference. And it came up recently where I was preparing a manuscript, and one of the papers that I wanted to include is called Punks, Daggers, and Welfare Queens. And this is a very famous paper in political science, and it kept telling me it didn't exist. And I kept shouting at the screen, it has 20,000 citations. How are you telling me this thing doesn't exist? But it was because that type of language and that type of sequence isn't standard for political science.
So follow up with that, do you have a resource you could share or recommendations on how to prompt differently to bypass some of those issues?
A recommendation, I mean, prompt, and prompt some more is a recommendation, but from a labor perspective, do you want to do free labor for OpenAI, or do you just want to go to the library? It's up to you. I would just go to the library, you're never going to get around that because AI systems are not sentient, they don't understand context, and we're never going to be able to engineer for humanity. We're never going to be able to engineer for that. So at best, it should be you and the machine, but not just the machine. But the problem is that we trust AI so much. And the science and psychology isn't settled around that, but people just seem to really want to use AI, and we have to kind of interrupt that because, again, we need humans.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mutale. Thank you so much. Again, amazing presentation, and thank you for taking all these wonderful questions. So let's thank our speaker once again. And with that, that concludes our opening keynote session. I do want to remind you all, though, make sure you join us on Thursday at 10:15 a.m. here in this same room for our closing plenary session on vision research, creating new pathways in a world built for sight. We have a fantastic panel of speakers for that. We'll really highlight some of the research advancements for people with low vision and feature some personal stories from researchers, visually impaired scientists, and patients. It's going to be an amazing session, so you don't want to miss it on Thursday. So most of all, thank you everyone for joining us for this opening keynote lecture. And so please enjoy your time in Salt Lake City, just a wonderful place, a really great venue. I wish all of you a fantastic ARVO 2025. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sada, for inviting me back. Wow. I also want to say thank you to Mutale and Nkonde one more time. Even I learned something about AI, and I'm AI generated. It has been a pleasure talking with you today and helping my human counterpart with this session. Perhaps we'll meet again.